everyone. I'm Natalie Shurtleff. I'm an Associate State Director with AARP in Connecticut, and we're here for another episode of Coffee and Tea with AARP, our biweekly interview series on the issues important to people 50 plus here in Connecticut and their families. So today I'm joined by AARP volunteer extraordinaire, Marilyn Diaz. Uh, and Representative Jane Garibay, who serves as the co-chair of the Aging Committee. So before we get started with our questions for Representative Garibay, I just wanted to give Marilyn a quick opportunity to introduce herself and talk about what she does with AARP.
I'll do it very, very quickly. I'm a proud constituent of Representative Garibay. Yay! I live in Windsor, love her dearly. I've been a volunteer for about 10 years, and I'm involved in a variety of AARP programs, which include, not limited to, Electric Choice, Broadwatch Network, Disrupt Aging in the Classroom and the Community, Advocacy, and more. And I'm also very privileged to be a volunteer at the national level. So love what I do and very proud of, again, my representative and being a volunteer for AARP. Yay!
Hi, Marilyn.
Well, thank you, Marilyn, and thank you so much for everything that you do for AARP. So, Representative Garibay, I know you've joined us before on Coffee and Tea, but do you want to just share a little bit about yourself, remind our viewers just a little bit about you and your background?
Okay, so hi, Natalie. Thank you for having me today. I've lived in, quite a few different places, including Mexico, different states like Vermont, but I always come back to my beloved town of Windsor, and now I get to represent Windsor and Windsor Locks. Did I ever think I was going to be here? I didn't. This wasn't my life's plan, but I think it's where I'm meant to be, and I am passionate about aging issues and helping our seniors.
Thank you. And you do such incredible work as co-chair of the Aging Committee. So, Marilyn, I'll let you take the first question.
All righty. So my representative knows this very, very well, and that is that family caregivers play such an important role in caring for their loved ones and allowing them to remain at home. But often, and actually way too often, caregivers face a lot of financial challenges. And ARP is supporting a caregiver tax credit to provide much needed financial relief. Can you talk about the legislation that the Aging Committee is working on or has raised to provide financial relief to caregivers?
Yes, caregiving at home is so important. It gives our seniors another choice how they want to spend their golden years, right? And what better than to be with family? That's the way it's been for years and years. But because of financial constraints, now people have to work. Back in my grandmother's time, just my grandfather worked, women were at home, and the generations could take care of their family members. Not only is it important for our seniors and their loved ones, but in the end, it saves the state a ton of money. And we don't think of that because if they have to go into a facility, you're talking thousands and thousands. So if we can give a tax credit to help with some of those expenses that they're experiencing, or even someone to sit with their loved one so they have a Friday night out, right? It's just so, so important, and it is a priority.
Great. Thank you so much. And I know we had a great hearing a little while ago in the Aging Committee where we had a bunch of AARP volunteers come and speak with you and your colleagues and share their stories about why caregiving is so important and what the legislation that your committee has introduced would do to support family caregivers. Is there anything about that testimony that really stood out for you?
Well, it's just very heartwarming, but you said, this is a team, and fortunate for me, AARP is part of that team. There's different organizations, but it's also my team members, because when we choose bills, we don't have as many as some committees. We fight for the ones that we believe in, and it takes the whole team to do that. As you know, Natalie, you're right there. When I look out and I see those AARP shirts, I'm like so excited.
Yeah, and we know that this is an issue that there really is strong bipartisan support. So everyone in the committee has been incredibly supportive, and we're hopeful that going forward throughout the legislative process, we'll continue to have that support. And AARP recently did some research and asked folks in Connecticut about their support for the caregiver tax credit, and 89% of Connecticut adults support a family caregiver tax credit. So there really is widespread support amongst Democrats, Republicans across the board.
It is. And well, we to all focus on the aging population and making life better with them, no matter which party or whatever you're from. In aging, it doesn't really mean very much. So we're fortunate.
Yeah. So I'm going to jump to another issue that there's been some bipartisan support in the Aging Committee that you've been working on this year to address. So protecting our vulnerable seniors from fraud. Can you tell us a little bit about what the committee is working on there?
Right. We've been working a few years on it, and the final bill isn't out, but we have to protect our seniors from all kinds of shams. We hear from our constituents, anywhere from $6,500. The recent was $1 million was withdrawn from a woman's account, and it's gone, because once they get that, it's gone. So we have to have education to our seniors about what is fraud. That insurance agent is being paid. They may be kind and nice, but they're not your friend. They are a business person, so it's relearning that maybe before in the past, it wasn't as prevalent as it is now. And through COVID, it got a lot worse. So we have to, educate our seniors, educate ourselves. And then we have to be able to have a play, reporting these, but then having forensic audits, and people in the state's attorney's office, et cetera, that actually work at tracing, where did this money go? So it does incur an added expense to the budget, but in the end, it'll save thousands and thousands of dollars. And when someone calls and says, we've kidnapped your grandson, you have to do this. The elderly, for the most part, aren't as technologically able, and I'll include myself in that. And some of them are lonely and alone. And so they get this email, and that person builds a relationship with them, and they end up actually mailing cash to the person. So it's very much needed, very much needed. And that's the fraud part. There's also keeping our seniors from being abused, right? Which is in that same area.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of work.
Definitely. And we know that our seniors continue to be victims of fraud. And it's not because they're the only ones being targeted or they're the only ones that fall for it. Younger people are also victims of fraud, but older people make really good targets because oftentimes they've accumulated assets over the years. So no one wants to, I'm paying for daycare for 2 kids. No one wants to try to take money from me.
Right. You're
I don't
absolutely
have a
right.
lot. But, hopefully by the time I'm older, I will have, more assets. And that's what makes our seniors so vulnerable, is that they have those assets that they've accumulated over so many years of hard work. It makes them prime targets, unfortunately.
And then they don't want to talk about it. They're embarrassed. They're older and they're like, well, what is my daughter going to think? I will give advice to all seniors out there. I do it with my son. When I see something sketchy, I send it to him and I'll say, hey, Andrew, what is this about? And he'll say, oh, it's okay, Ma, or this is fraud. Because it's hard to know. They're very smart and very tricky.
Yeah, I think that's great advice for anyone. I mean, even, definitely for older folks, but even for younger folks too. It's sometimes having a second set of eyes to catch something that looks maybe a little bit off, and you're like, let me ask someone about this. I'll hand things over to my husband. Is this real or not?
Right.
And I think having that second set of eyes can be,
because they're very smart. They're very smart. It's not because we're not knowledgeable, but these people are very smart at what they do.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm going to jump in and make a selfish plug for fraud and AARP, because we have a wonderful presentation that we can bring anywhere. Matter of fact, did a couple of them for the Windsor Housing Authority recently. So selfish plug, if anybody's interested, contact AARP and we'll be more than happy to do a presentation. And you're absolutely correct. These individuals are scammers, very smart. And one scam today, it's a new scam tomorrow. Our advice is always delete, block, and report, because reporting is one of the ways that we can, in fact, help to catch some of these individuals. And we're changing the way we talk about the victims too, because that's what they are, is victims. They're not stupid and they shouldn't feel embarrassed. Now, having said that, off of my soapbox and on to, during the legislative session, you know, because you already said it, a lot of us volunteers, myself included, show up in Hartford in our red shirts and to talk about these important issues. What can you tell our listeners about how they can make their voices heard? And thank you so much for all that you do and being part of our team. So what can constituents do?
And I was remiss because you are absolutely right. AARP has a lot of information on fraud and how to help seniors, and it's a good go-to place. So it is wonderful to see AARP there with their shirts. You're always there advocating, and it does make a difference. If we only hear one side or one thing, and no bill gets 100% buy-in. So it's important that the voices are heard. But for me, it's in my district, in my community of Windsor and Windsor Locks. If I'm in the grocery store, I really don't want to stand and talk for an hour, but I love to hear from people to say, you know what, I heard about this, and this is really important to me. Or reach out with a phone call or an email or a text. My cell phone's out everywhere. And to let me know, because there might be an issue that I'm not even thinking of, or to know, but it also helps us make some of the tough decisions to protect and give services to our seniors, is hearing from people. And we really do listen. And if you're not from Windsor and you have an issue, call or reach out to your legislator from the district you're in. We do pay attention, especially members of the aging committee that'll be making the preliminary decisions to move these out.
Yep. And quite frankly, Jane, Representative Garibay,
No,
I don't know. I don't know how you do what you do, because you have responded to email messages at midnight. That's a little joke between us. But thank you for all that you do. I just have a quick question, and that is there anything that we have not covered that you'd like to share with our viewers?
Well, another one of our priorities is the biomarker bill, which is genetic testing. We already have it for Medicaid recipients, but this would be for Medicare. And what that $200 biomarker does, if your doctor deems it's necessary, you can test from family history of Alzheimer's or whether you have the gene. And why is that important? I just had lunch with a friend and she says, well, I don't want to know. And I said, but if you know, we have 2 medicines out right now that help with the effects of the Alzheimer's, but you have to catch it early. So the sooner you know that you might have a challenge, and you might be, 20 years away from it, because not everyone progresses. These 2 medicines, and I expect more to come, really help with that progression. So to me, that's very important. And our insurance committee has worked on it for a few years. They are in support of it coming out of the aging committee. So we're really excited about that bill. We think it'll make a difference in people's lives.
Great, thank you.
And we have so many more, but too many to go in today. But be on the lookout.
Yeah, we really know that the aging committee is working on so many things, because there's so many different things that affect our older Connecticut residents. And so
Right.
I feel like the aging committee kind of touches so many different issues, because all of those different things affect our older Connecticut residents.
Right. And it may affect other populations, but as we get older, a lot of these become more acute or more present. So it has to do with the elderly, and we're always looking for ideas because we don't know everything. Any ideas that we need to do? Again, we're always looking for, We look into nursing homes, we look into home care. How do we support our seniors? The whole gamut. Medicines, we're looking in a small group. How do we manufacture our own insulin and our own medications to keep them at affordable prices in Connecticut? So there's a lot that we're working on.
They say that the aging committee is small but mighty, and it is so true. You've impacted a lot of areas and a lot of people. So, sorry, that was a side comment. Thank
I
you.
hadn't heard that, but I love it. Small but mighty. We'll take it. We do have a great team, a great team. So, again, we are very fortunate. And to get good legislation passed, you have to work with a lot of people, a lot of groups, and you have to work as a united team.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, I mean, speaking of what the Small but Mighty Aging Committee does, do you want to talk a little bit, just a quick overview of what you guys were able to accomplish last year? Because there were really some tremendous wins out of the Aging Committee last year.
Right. There's so many, because the speaker chose it to be the speaker's main bill. We were able to help a lot of organizations monetarily that are doing seniors issue, like our area agencies on aging, etc. I think one of the biggest is the 4 to 2 beds in a nursing home by 2026, which is, everyone just imagine what it would be like to be with 4 beds and you're only a foot apart from each other. With TVs blaring, no like microphones that you're just listening to your show. Some of that care. So that was one of our big ones. But in the speaker's bill, there were 23 bills. And in the governor's bill, which we also received, was another 13. So that's 36 bills for the aging committee. Some of the bigger committees put out, hundreds of bills. But we really worked hard to bring those in. So anyone that wants, we will go out. The aging committee members will go out to a town and talk about specifically and bring handouts of, the bills that affect them.
Well, thank you. And I still, I'm just basking in the win from last year. My predecessor had a lot more to do with it than I did, but still just such a great success in both of those bills last year, and what they will do for our nursing home residents and for older people that want to age at home in
Right.
the presumptive eligibility, really just a lot of incredible victories last year, and it was many years in the works.
Yeah, some were small, like requiring home care workers to wear an ID badge, right? They know who you are, they're going in, but you could have someone coming to your door that you don't know. That was big. A registry of home care. Because they've grown so much during COVID, we've put in protection for our adult day centers, which is a great place across the state. I think we have 37, and helping them. That's where you send your loved one during the day when you have to go to work, if they can't be home. Or like my mom, she just loved going, so she would go 2 days a week, and she would choose the ones where, they were, had music, or they were outside planting, etc. So there were so many, for quality of life, issues for our seniors that you would have thought they were already in place, but they weren't. So it's always a joy. And yes, we've had a successful team and this will be our 3rd successful year. For us, it was successful before by other legislators, but for the team we have now, this will be our 3rd year.
Hey, well, thank you so much for joining us today, for that work last year, what you're continuing to do this year. We look forward to continuing to work with you and continue to pass more policy, more laws that will help improve the lives of our seniors in Connecticut. So thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Marilyn, as well, for joining us.
And I thank you. It's always a pleasure to talk, Natalie, and Marilyn. And right. It's always a pleasure to talk about these issues, and AARP is so good at advocating for our elderly population, educating us, putting information out. And I love to hear from you because you're the feet on the ground. You're right out there. So whatever you bring to us, we know is important. So we appreciate you too.
Thank you. So wrapping it up, thank you to all of you, our viewers, for tuning in to another episode of Coffee and Tea with AARP. So join us again in 2 weeks for another episode. You can also check out our back episodes here on Facebook and on YouTube. And scan this QR code if you want to become an e-advocate and join us to advance policies like many of the ones we talked about today to improve the lives of the 50 plus here in Connecticut. Thank you.